Okay, let's start.
Okay. Before I start, putting my stuff live, is there anything else that you want to say before the interview? Make sure it gets mentioned. Maybe sometimes I could ask a question, you could like smash it down, like I could set up for you. Is there anything else
No,
that you
that's
want to
fine.
do?
I'll just answer your questions. Basically, I'm
I
comfortable.
love it. All right, cool, man.
I've been teaching chemistry for over 30 years, so I can answer
Oh,
questions.
I'm a chemist too. I love chemistry. Yeah, that's
Okay,
cool.
good.
Okay, what kind of chemistry?
Well, I started teaching college chemistry in Florida in 1991,
It's
general.
been a while. Oh my God, the
And
PKA.
I and my
I would
last
probably fail that now. I would fail that now.
and
Okay, I'm sorry to say.
my
Yeah, go
last
ahead.
my last classes were in the spring of 2020, in 2020, 2000 in May of 2021. So I've basically been a consultant since then. So
Okay. And you're running for Congress in North Carolina, right?
yeah, the second district.
Okay. I'll just put that up for now, and I'll add the second district later. I'll add in the thumbnail if you want as well. No
And it's
problem. I'll put it in right now. Don't worry about it. Second
It's
district.
Gene Douglas with two S's.
Got it. Right, just like that. Yeah, I can see it on your screen. I cheated, right? I looked at that. I looked at your screen right there. Yeah. Appreciate it.
The most common one is the thing. So where are you from in New York? Because I went to
Oh,
college
okay.
in Barclay Manor.
I'm actually in Ridgewood, New York City right now.
Now,
Um,
Ridgewood, is that Queens
that's
or
in Queens. Yeah,
oh, okay,
but
okay,
it's close to Bushwick, so it's kind of like on the borderline right there.
okay.
Okay, it's like
Bushwick, the
hipster territory,
Bronx?
which is sad. Bronx,
Bushwick.
yeah, I got friends in the Bronx, yeah.
No, Bushwick, the Bronx. Is that part of the
No,
Bronx?
Bushwick is in Brooklyn.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's hipster territory. It's like all, yeah, it's pretty disgusting. Sorry to say, bro. Hopefully you're Republican enough to hate that shit, which I do. Anyways,
What?
let's
Sorry?
don't worry about it. All right, you ready?
Yeah, we could
Okay, I
be
just hit
ready.
okay, 3, 2, 1. It's going live right now. Hey, what's up? It's your boy DGL7. Today, as you know, I'm running the Unify Platform series with candidates all around the nation. And I'm excited to have this candidate on. We're meeting him. So go ahead, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Gene Douglas. I basically I got involved in politics in 1998 when we moved to Hawaii. I've been teaching chemistry since 1991. And when we moved to Hawaii, I found out Senator Daniel Inouye was running for re-election, and I decided to take him on as a Republican. I ran in the primary, came in third out of 9 in 1998. I basically annoyed him a lot and had a lot of fun going around Hawaii. And that's kind of lay in the background. That's one reason I like it on Kauai. But we lived in Hilo for 3 years and there. But I ran for Senator Inouye's seat in 1998 and then Senator Kaka's seat in 2000 as a Republican. Came in third out of 9 the first time. They put 2 Democrats in the top 2 places, and then came in second out of 4 the second time. And they put a clown former GOP chair in there and to win first place, so I wouldn't win. But I had a good time anyway. My point was to educate the public, not win. I have a life outside, like basically teaching chemistry. So
Okay.
basically, I got involved originally because I embarrassed Senator Daniel Inouye in 1985 when I was working as a chemist in Decatur, Illinois, because he got very political, and and I asked him a political question, and
What was the question?
the audience laughed. Well, I can explain it. Hopefully, your audience is educated, but it shows the corruption in politics and in the U.S. Senate and the House ever since 19. Have you heard of the ethanol being used for gasoline?
Yeah, people using it to fuel the vehicles now.
Well, it goes in to increase the octane of gasoline. It replaced essentially a chemical compound called tetraethyl lead, which used to increase the octane, which makes the burning more efficient. And
Right.
basically, they decided brilliantly to put ethanol in it, which essentially hurt gas mileage, and that was a substitute that supposedly was sustainable because it came from corn instead of methyl terbutyl ethanol with methyl terbutyl ether, which is essentially better for gasoline and basically more efficient. And so it's a situation where basically I was working at a Staley Manufacturing Company as a chemist. I basically was involved, they make cornstarch and corn sweetener. And basically I was involved in the taste testing there for, they had a new product in 1985 called high fructose corn syrup. And basically I was involved in the taste testing to put that sweetener in Coke and Pepsi to see how it compared to sugar.
Interesting. Where'd
so-
that go?
Sorry?
I said, that's very interesting. Where did that go?
Well, basically what happened was they started a political action committee in 1985. And I was particularly interested in it because of my life. I grew up in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia. And my family was very political, liberal, leftist, Quaker. But I was a Christian. I became a Christian in 1973, and I was a conservative Republican and basically rejected it all. Went to a Christian college instead of Swarthmore College in Bartlett Manor, New York, where I went to college. So it's just up the Hudson from you. But back to the story, basically, I went to this political action committee, and Senator Daniel Inouye of Hawaii, who happened to be the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, got up and said how glad he was to help ADM Staley get government sponsorship of grain alcohol, because ADM and Staley was helping keep the price supports high on sugar, because high sugar prices helped Hawaii sugar farmers.
Okay.
Well, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I said, I at the time, I said to myself, this is stupid. He has no understanding of the chemistry, because basically I was involved in the taste testing of high fructose corn syrup. And the thing is, they were developing the product to replace sugar.
I do want, wait, that's been bugging me from, like, I've been wondering that for a moment. So what's your position? Are you for high fructose corn syrup? Are you against it?
No, it's just
How do you
another
feel about
product. It's just another product that should have been available anyway. But the point is,
Okay.
it's a little complicated, because when essentially the federal government spends billions of dollars to essentially incentivize corn farmers and ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, and Staley to essentially change food starch into ethanol, essentially for putting in gasoline to essentially burn it. It makes no sense practically, because essentially they're taking food and putting it in a gas tank instead of feeding people with it. So historically, starch was a very important product. There's always been one. And essentially, corn syrup, Staley syrup came out for pancakes and such like that. And so basically, it's a natural product evolution. But Senator Daniel Inouye wanted to keep the price for regular sugar that comes in a bag, and keep the price of sugar high.
I can see why politically those things could happen. This kind of corruption story with tied to industry.
Than international price, right.
Yeah, this is common in all industries for real.
Right.
But I've never done this in any of the interviews that I've done, and then the 90 interviews that I've done, right? 30 here in New York City and 60 nationwide, by the way. But I'm just fascinated by the story. I'm also a chemist, by the way, and I just want to ask you on some of these things. Now, you know that being a chemist yourself, okay, you know that often the industry has certain products that they want to, that are waste products from another. That's really where the money is in chemistry.
Well, that's what I'm
Someone has a waste product and you turn that into a resource for something else.
Yes, that's what I'm
getting. So go ahead. Oh, break it down. Oh, man. So go ahead. I have a feeling that's tied to this whole thing.
It'll all fit together nicely. This comes from my teaching chemistry for 30 years, okay? So basically the key thing is that basically ethanol has been made from corn for decades. And basically when they're making cornstarch and regular corn syrup and everything else from the corn that comes from corn many years, essentially they have a leftover material after they've taken the cornstarch out, after they take
it's cheap as hell. Exactly.
And essentially it's called trash mash. They put yeast in it and then they generate ethanol from it, and that gets the rest of the benefit out of it. So ethanol is available as an industrial product. Okay. It's not supposed.
That's why this is happening.
It's not supposed to be drunk. It's just a natural byproduct that they make into something useful. It's sustainable. It's like they want to get all the chemicals they can out of this corn.
Exactly. That's the industry.
But
that's what chemistry is all about.
Right. But the scam comes from the fact that the federal government and environmental activists in the federal government wanted to essentially pay billions of dollars to ADM and Staley so that they could get ethanol directly from the starch by a chemical means. Essentially,
I appreciate your expertise in this faction, and I want to say it's really right. It's kind of odd that when they have these talk about climate change and stuff like that, where are the candidates that have like a background like yourself, right? Yeah, actual scientists. So I
well,
like to
they're
appreciate that.
nonsense.
Actual scientists.
They
What's
act
up?
like they know everything.
They don't. They know nothing.
And they request people from, they have a PhD in political science, and they ask them for science help. When in reality, the chemists are silenced because they don't want to hear the truth, and it's a marketing game. Well,
You're damn right.
my point of the story is that basically me as a chemist sitting there in 1985 said this makes no sense. Senator
Okay.
Noy wants the price of sugar kept high artificially by
Okay.
price support. Okay.
All right. So just so you know,
ADM and Staley is making high fructose corn syrup so that they can take the market away from sugar. Okay.
there's other areas I want to dip into. Normally the interview goes like this. Okay, this is part of the series. Okay. Every candidate gets asked the same questions in the same order. So you can compare your answers, stuff like that. I don't usually I took this in the first time in the history of this channel, I took this little aside to go to the chemistry thing, but we're going to go snap back to the actual
Well, can I
interview as normally scheduled. Okay, go ahead.
Get back to the politics.
Go ahead. I have other things I want to ask about. We're going to ask at the end.
Right, of
But
course.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm almost done here. The point is, it doesn't make any sense. And I laughed to myself and a buddy next to me. Well, then he gets into a rant about how Reagan should be impeached because essentially he was using the CIA to mine the harbors of Managua, Nicaragua, because the Soviet Union was actively bringing arms and munitions into Managua to support the communist government against the Contras.
Talk about Oliver North?
Yeah, that involves Oliver North and others, yes.
How do you feel about Oliver North? Guilty or innocent?
Well, let me finish the story.
Go ahead.
Talk about all this stuff. But the point is that basically he was saying that Reagan should be impeached because Reagan, for the CIA, was not informing Congress what they were doing. So that was grounds for impeaching Reagan. The Democrats have wanted to impeach Republican presidents ever since Nixon, okay? Every one of them, they wanted to impeach him, okay? So it's nothing new what happened with Trump. So it's all a game. So essentially it's just a rhetorical game. But the point was, he was in a rant about how Reagan should be impeached because of CIA. But I read the National Review at the time when it was a good magazine. And basically, I had read that the CIA had presented a report to the Senate Intelligence Committee, of which Senator Daniel Noy was the head. Okay. And
ooh, it's getting good. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is getting real good. Go ahead.
And I said, look, I raised my hand and said, Senator Noy, the CIA presented a report to your committee last week about why they were doing it, essentially things, and he commented and said, I didn't read it.
Oh, it's disgusting.
And a whole bunch of people in the audience, including me, laughed at him. And then later on, I found out he tried to get me fired. Well, I started teaching in 1991. I started in Florida, then went out to Micronesia out near Guam. Taught there for 2 years, and then went to Hawaii, found out he was running for re-election, and I decided I'd take him on that because in the 13 years between 1985 and 1997, the sugar industry in Hawaii was totally destroyed because Coke, Pepsi, General Foods, and the other food companies essentially replaced sugar totally with high fructose corn syrup. So if you look at a Coke can, it says high fructose corn syrup. It doesn't say sugar on it. And basically that's because the price of sugar was kept high. The price of high fructose corn syrup was made very low because essentially the federal government is paying billions for trash mash. And so basically it's trash mash because it's still made from the raw materials of all the corn wet milling and everything. But the point is, that's what's wrong in Washington, and it's still what's wrong in Raleigh.
There's so many other things I want to ask you about. Yeah, I'm dying. Yeah, but we're going to get to that at the end. Yeah.
That's why I got involved in politics. And I went up to Senator Noy in 1998 for that, and then Senator Kaka because he supported the same positions. And then when you moved to New Hampshire, so I could teach another job, I ran against a Rhino Republican Representative Charlie Bass of New Hampshire in the 2nd District of New Hampshire. And
I heard the name.
We took him on because I was pro-life. He wasn't, but also worse, he was a Republican, but was not supporting the Bush administration's efforts in Congress to get the legislation through that they wanted, he voted with the Democrats most of the time. So I ran as a conservative alternative in 2002. And the thing that's interesting, when I was running in 98 in Hawaii, we put my wife in to run for Congress, and she won the primary and then ran against Patsy Mink in 1998. And so basically she got over a third of the vote against Patsy. And then I ran against the incumbent Rhino Republican in 2002 in New Hampshire. So that's my history. But now I retired from teaching chemistry and sold my house in south of Fayetteville, moved up here to Raleigh, and found out that Deborah Ross, classic liberal feminazi, essentially was running for re-election. It wasn't a nice Republican that I could support, so I decided, well, with my history, that I should take her on too, for the same reasons I did before. So I'm just out here having a lot of fun and running against two other candidates. My main opponent is essentially a very qualified retired military person, which has a lot of credentials in his own right. And I'm not running against him. I'm running against Deborah Ross, because I think the Republicans have to band together and go after anyway in November, whoever wins. But I still think I can win because of my own history and the fact that I'm a college chemistry teacher. I'm not a typical politician, either the military kind or the politician kind that stays in office 30 years. So,
You know, one thing I like about you though is like a lot of college professors, I feel like they get too like, you know, I guess I don't want to. I don't really. I'm not gonna say woke thing, but you know, like they're kind of go lefty.
They act like they're expert in everything, when in reality they're only expert in their narrow area of expertise.
But you were anti-establishment professor. You kind of like against the grain.
Well, I grew up in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, where Swarthmore College is there.
You know what I'm talking about though, right? Most academics are kind of like, you know, they seem kind of like pencil necks, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, my grandfather went to Yale, and my uncles went to Penn, and Princeton, and
oh, you seem ruthless though. I like it, man.
And I grew up in Swarthmore, where Swarthmore College is, and people thought
I don't know that school, so I didn't really know.
And Swarthmore College is so elite, they look down on the Ivies as if they're beneath them. So,
oh, really? I did not know this. Okay.
But it's mostly BS. It's just nonsense. It's like they act superior when in reality they're just stupid morally, and essentially destroy their families without a second thought. And
fascinating.
While they pretend to be wonderful and look down on the low lives like you and me. I drove a cab in Philadelphia for 2 summers when I was going to college, paying myself through. So that wasn't very fashionable with the people that I used to, that I grew up with around. They made me sick.
So okay, you answered a lot of the questions, but I'm just gonna ask for some clarifications on the point. So the first question you usually ask is, how did you, you know, start with the, you know, what's the first thing that you kind of did politically? So you told me that it was this, you know, working on this, taking on, what's his name, Dan Edo, or what's his name?
Senator Daniel Hanoi of Hawaii.
Daniel Hanoi, right? Yeah.
In 1998, in 1996, when we were in Ponape out in Micronesia, I tried to do some fundraising for Senator Robert Dole, who was running for president in 1996. So that was my first effort of doing something political. But I spent most of my career either working as a chemist or teaching chemistry. So
okay, that's a good answer. Okay, so the next question is going to be like, the thing is that some people say they have like a certain ideology. I know you said that you're a Republican, right? Yeah, Republican means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Talk about rhinos, right? I've heard that term before. That means Republican in name only. Some people just run, you know, because it's just a way to get ballot access and things like that. Some people say it's socialist, some people say centrist, some people say moderate, right? Would you have a certain ideology? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well,
what that is?
Well, because I grew up in a very liberal democratic family, and my mom's cousin was a communist who was involved in the one world order, so to speak, back in the 40s. They all loved Alger Hiss and were angry at Whittaker Chambers for exposing him as a Soviet spy. And if you've ever seen the movie Oppenheimer, Oppenheimer was the victim of a honeypot that essentially got him to give all the stuff over to the Soviet Union. So it's a situation where basically my family is full of that, and they weeped and everything else when the Rosenbergs were executed. So it's a situation where I grew up with that nonsense. My mom's cousin was the chairman of the chemistry department at Penn. And I made the mistake of in 1973 saying that I was hoping to go there, 74 would go there. And he just sneered at me because he didn't like my politics because it wasn't theirs. And so basically I decided to go to Christian college instead. But I liked Penn growing up in Swarthmore, and I worked. And so basically I decided to go to Christian college instead because I was a Christian. I became one in 1973.
So I'm dipping out again. Wait a second. So like the thing is that, right? I don't know you're teaching now, but the thing is that you said that some guy got you fired, right? Yeah. So
No, Senator General Noy tried to get me fired.
Oh, tried to get you fired. Okay, but he didn't
Yeah,
succeed.
this was in 1985 because I embarrassed him in front of the crowd.
Yeah, but he didn't succeed
because everybody laughed at him because he was
all right.
He was lying about Reagan. He was saying he wasn't informing Congress when in reality they were, and he didn't read the report. So
okay, so like, what do? You contact the college president and like kind of lean on
I
him
have
or something?
no. This was at the company I worked for. I was told that he tried to get me fired, but I didn't get fired. It didn't work.
Well, I'm glad you.
So I tried to get him fired 13 years later by running for his Senate seat.
Not everybody has your pedigree and connections. I mean, that probably helped you somewhat, or maybe not, right? Maybe you're just also a producer of the company.
Well, see, in 1995, when I was working in Micronesia, we also had the pleasure of hosting Cindy McCain, John McCain's wife, and one of their sons over to our house on Pohnpei for a spaghetti dinner because they heard that I was interested in politics and Cindy was visiting the islands.
Do you have tenure?
What?
Do you have tenure?
No, it's just a 2-year contract. I was an associate professor there, but it was a 2-year contract. And basically, Cindy McCain, President wannabe John McCain's wife, was visiting the islands, and we had them over to our house for spaghetti dinner and such like that. So that was 1995 or 6. And so that's kind of a political act, I guess, hosting them. And it was fun. And my wife continued contact with her afterwards and everything else. And we heard they had connections in Hawaii. So when I decided to run for Senator Noy's seat, we thought they'd be happy. But basically, because I was going after his war buddy on real issues, like he helped destroy the Hawaii sugar industry, basically, I had the honor of Senator McCain calling me an a-hole. So because I was going after his war buddy. And I thought that was very funny because I was used to having Democrats smear Republicans where I was growing up, or laugh about them, or be nasty to them when I was growing up. But it's nothing new. All what's going on now with what they call Republicans Nazis and everything else is just they're just describing themselves essentially. So that's called projection. But the point is, in some respects, the political system,
man. I'm with that.
The political system in Washington, D.C. is broken because essentially they're trying to make the federal government bigger when the United States Constitution is essentially designed to keep it small, because the real function of the Constitution is to say that the federal government has responsibility for defending the country against external enemies. That means other countries that want to war on us, like Japan, and like Germany, who both declared war on us, or Germany that declared war on us back for World War I, and basically we go in there to win, and also to help interstate commerce and essentially promote infrastructure in the U.S. to promote infrastructure. That is what the Constitution says our federal government should do. It shouldn't be micromanaging people in New York City. It shouldn't be letting all these illegal immigrants into it, so get it shipped up to New York City because de Blasio wanted to be a sanctuary city when in reality he didn't. So it's just, in some respects, it's a corrupt game, and the Democrats have been running it for decades. After Franklin Roosevelt and even back to Woodrow Wilson, and basically bankrupting our country, whereas the Republicans come in and try and stop it when in reality they can't really deal with the bureaucracy effectively. So basically, if I reach Congress, I want to help the other Republicans with like-minded to essentially dismantle the federal government apparatus and bring responsibility back to the states where it belongs. and essentially reduction in force most of the bureaucracy in Washington. So because the responsibilities come back to North Carolina or New York or wherever else, and then basically taxpayers' money is saved and everything else, and essentially they start paying off the debt instead of essentially bankrupting our kids and grandkids, because the debt, the national debt is like $40 trillion or $50 trillion or such like that. It's just absurd. So, because I remember when it was 7 trillion or 5 trillion.
You know, I don't even really know what that means. I don't even like, you know,
Well, it just
making up
means
money out of thin air nowadays.
it just means they get loans from either the Social Security system or other things like that, essentially saying we'll pay you back later. It's like using a credit card. We'll pay you back later, but they never pay it back.
We'll get to the policy stuff for later, but the thing is that for right now, in the first half of the interview is really getting to know you just as a person, right? Yeah. So we talked about your ideology, right? And that was quite an answer, but I do understand it, right? I do feel
But my
similarities there.
ideology comes from reading the Republican platform. If you read the Republican platform, that's essentially what I believe. I'm very, very, very happy with it because of the nature of what I grew up in and everything else. So that's why I call myself a Republican,
Okay,
because
to help
I
us,
wholeheartedly believe in it. In contrast to the Democratic platform, which is essentially corrupt and even bizarro world, because essentially they want to be able to kill unborn children at any age, and they essentially want to say it's okay to sterilize teenagers because they're mentally confused, because their parents are confusing them because they don't like what sex they are. So it's just a eugenics game that they like to play, and it's totally corrupt. And as a Republican, I'm proud to call myself one, in spite of the fact there are rhinos out there who are just pretending. But thankfully, President Trump did a great job of exposing the rhinos.
I have my own thoughts on this, but it's not about me. It's about you. So I appreciate it, your honesty, and honestly, I prefer that. And you know, there is some truth in what you're saying. I do feel like just in support, right? I know
That's
the
cool.
medical industry is taking advantage here, so I do appreciate you know, advocates like this, right? They're not necessarily always the enemy, even if you don't agree, right? I appreciate what you're saying. So, anyways, let's move on to the to help us
if
bring
people
into
don't agree with me,
focus.
they don't have to vote for me. So it's like, that's okay.
I think we could have a conversation because
Fine,
I think
I
on
don't
some
care.
things we might agree more than you might think, right? Yeah,
That's
maybe
fine.
maybe not, right? Yeah, but going to the next
So
piece.
shoot, I'm done with my history. If you want to know any more, I'll be glad to tell you. But I'm done. You can ask any questions you like.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring this Republican thing into focus now. Now, one thing that can help us really understand more about your Republican leanings, right, is that some people, like if they're Democrats, they may say, I'm an FDR Democrat, right? I like the New Deal or something like that, right? If you, okay, if you're, so let's suppose that you're a Republican, whose influences your political thought? Earlier you mentioned McCain, right? Not necessarily in the best way.
No. He's a corrupt rhino.
No, it doesn't seem like you liked him. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
He
It
called
seemed
me
like
an
you,
a-hole.
but
He
he's
called me an a-hole.
Republican.
I thought
Yeah,
he was a
so
good guy.
who
But
no, so who do you like though? Who is there someone who's influential to your political thought? Rush
basically,
Limbaugh? I don't know.
well, I liked Rush Limbaugh. My son listened to him more than I did, but basically I liked Rush Limbaugh, but he got very repetitive, and I didn't listen anymore because his script all day was repeating the same thing, which kind of is boring for me because I heard it once.
I get it. I get it.
But a lot of people like him. I think what he was saying was great, but I don't need to hear it 10 times to agree with him. But the thing is, one thing I'm proud of my son is in the 90s when I liked to listen to Rush now and then, he said he liked Rush Limbaugh also, but he thought Hannity was a clown. And at the time, I liked to watch Hannity on Fox News a little. But then
I'm sorry I even mentioned Rush Limbaugh because I don't want him to overtake this. I want to know who's influential to you. Like maybe there isn't somebody, or maybe it's a mixture, but who do you really think influenced your personal political direction or whatever?
Well, basically, it's a wide variety of people. Abraham Lincoln was involved in starting the Republican Party, as was Frederick Douglass, a freed slave who was a black man who wanted freedom for his people. And Abraham Lincoln wanted to do that. And that's what got us into our Civil War, which essentially was to free the slaves, because I come from a family of abolitionists, both from England and other stuff like that, Quaker and Quaker / Presbyterian / congregational. And so it's a situation where the abolitionist movement started in England, and they basically, a lot of people in New England were also, and it's a situation where it, in Bible times it talks about slaves, but in reality slaves are different than, they were more like indentured service, that they took care of them and everything else, and they saw no benefit in
I have to ask.
the
Okay, so
traditional thing. So
I
basically, the key
yeah.
thing is that the Republican Party was the anti-slavery party from the beginning, and that's one reason it was started, and I'm proud to be part of that thing.
Okay.
Instead of the party of the Ku Klux Klan and eugenics and communism and
Well, the Democrats were the part of the Ku Klux Klan, weren't they?
of course, they were the jackboot thugs of the Democratic Party. They always have been. And Hillary Clinton's mentor was Robert Byrd, and Robert Byrd was a Grand Dragon before he entered Congress. So of course he had to drop his moniker. But the point is, again, the Democrats have been the most racist while pretending they're not ever since. And they're the ones who essentially have run Harvard, saying people with your background can't get in because you study too hard and your skin color is the wrong thing. So it's easy. If you got Chow as the last name,
Appreciate that.
no,
Appreciate
sorry,
that.
you're
Thank
good
you.
in there.
Thank you.
But those are white liberals that do that. It
You know,
isn't the normal people like me. It's just, and because basically the skin color has
Appreciate
to do with essentially the level of melanin in the skin and the diet of tribes at different
They
places.
put a limit. They said this is as high you're allowed to go. Hell no. Anyway, appreciate
Everybody's
that for
created
real,
in
man.
God's image, and
Yeah.
the thing is, we're not supposed. There are people in the Philippines
Okay,
and
but let's go back to you. Okay, once again, like
who are
I
darker
respect
skinned
the
than many in Africa.
and I really appreciate the reference to Frederick Douglass and Lincoln. That was awesome. How do you feel about Trump? He's kind of out there. He's
Well,
kind of
he
rebel.
was a former, like Ronald
Not all
Reagan.
bad. Not all
Well,
good.
like Ronald Reagan, he was a former Democrat. Like
True.
Ronald Reagan, he was a
Very true.
former ladies' man. They both repented and got out of that. Ronald Reagan is an early example of someone who ran the Screen Actors Guild in Hollywood, and essentially was a man about town also. But then he finally settled down and unfortunately married Jane Wyman, and she dumped him, and then married his wife, he was happily married to for the rest of his life. And in some respects, he became a Republican because he saw that it was different for the Democrats for the same reasons. He liked the platform, and he became a Christian and pro-life, and realized that that was what he needed to be.
So you think he's earned the term full-blood Republican? You think he's earned it?
Well, yes, of course.
Cool, right. I just want to know. Okay, just so we know.
I appreciate him too, but I also like Gerald Ford and Richard Nixon, because in some respects they were more honorable than JFK and LBJ. So because they were totally corrupt. LBJ was involved in the killing of JFK. So it's like, the Democrats like to kill each other.
But you also said JFK was bad as well.
Well, of course, he was. His father was a mob figure, essentially, who got rich by bootlegging. So again, it's like the Camelot thing is a bunch of nonsense and everything else. And again,
I agree with that. Thank you for saying that.
Richard Nixon, in reality, won the election in 1960, but he didn't fight it because he thought it was in the best interest of the U.S. not to. So he got elected 8 years later. After
it's known that there was tampering going on.
LBJ used the CIA to kill JFK. So
you're not wrong. Look it up, folks. You can see there was tampering the JFK election. You can look it up. It's a known thing. Mobsters actually cracked the ballots. This is a known fact in history.
John F. Kennedy. So basically,
people like you can trust the election. Historically, they've tampered.
Were victims of the Kennedy dynasty. The Kennedy dynasty started with Joe. Those are the real criminals.
Just we had a guy from Brexit on earlier who's saying how like the Democrats actually shut out the Africans from voting up in the Bronx. So they're trying to have a rally. We're going to see what happens.
Well, the thing is, the blacks, the black groups and Africans are finally realizing that the Democratic Party is not their allies, because they want to let all these illegal immigrants to come in to take lower paying jobs and everything else, and essentially taken away from American citizens who are just trying to get out of high school and get a job to start something. but the jobs at McDonald's or stores or other things are gone because the company.
We're not in agreement on everything, but a lot of things you're saying I could relate.
Guatemala less than they could pay someone from New York City, which is all perverted.
You're damn right, bro. Like, honestly, like, while I don't agree with you on everything, a lot of things you're saying I could relate 100%. Yeah, like, speaking a lot of truths here, and I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like your style, man. You're like the kind of the guy who's going to say stuff that other people aren't. So,
Well, I've
we need that,
so
some of that.
I
Yeah.
tend to be direct.
Good. Excellent. Yeah, do you want to lie? No, you
No.
don't. Yeah,
No,
exactly.
I see no point. It's like trying to
don't,
cover up a lie is a lot more work than just telling the truth and trusting God about the result. So
Okay. So we got to almost all the questions about yourself, which is good to know. Now we're going to move on to the policy questions.
sure.
Now, the thing is that I have a bunch of partners that I work with, and the thing is I always ask about their issues first. So actually, there's about 5 questions for my partners. I'm going to ask them about your general stuff, your policy ideas. So the first one's going to be Assange. Do you support the freedom of Assange?
Well, I don't know enough information about that. In some respects, President Trump was privy to a lot more information than I am and decided not to. Being president and reading all of the intelligence things or whatever else, he obviously had a lot more information than I do, so I can't take a position on that. If anything happens, it would have to be the president to do it. So when President Trump gets reelected, I'll leave it up to him to decide that. I'm not running for president. I'm running to replace Deborah Ross because we need less Democrats in the House, not more.
Like, I was out of the country when Trump was president, so I didn't see everything that went on. But honestly, when I come back here, it feels like
well,
give him a hard time.
Let me describe that situation to you.
I feel like all this legal trouble he's having is unfair. I think it's weird. And I think it's like
that helps explain why I like Trump. Okay, I taught for a year in Iraq. Okay, I was there 2016 and 2017 when Trump got elected. The Obama administration in Iraq essentially, and Syria and other places.
So wait a second. Were you teaching soldiers, or were you teaching like children in Iraq?
No, I was teaching college students in Iraq in the
Iraqi students, American students.
At the American University in Iraq, Suleimani, which is in Suleimani, Iraq. It's an American university there that teaches all the students in English from Iraqi families.
So it's an international school.
Well, no, it's for Iraqi families, but basically there's a whole bunch of different. There's American University in Beirut and Egypt and other places. So again, it's sponsored by a lot of Americans that want American curriculum taught at different places. Even Nazarbayev University, where I taught in Kazakhstan, used American curriculum. The School of Science and Technology got its curriculum out of Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. So basically, the government of Kazakhstan wanted to have a more Western view about science and technology, to learn critical thinking and other stuff like that. Also to learn English, because President Nazarbayev decided to have the official languages of Kazakhstan be Russian, Kazakh, and English. English was so that they could go out to the world and be involved in international commerce. Kazakh, because they're Kazakhs, it's Kazakhstan, as well as Russians, because there's a significant Russian population.
I just ask something personally.
Their background should be honored, because they're important for the Kazakhstan economy.
I don't believe anything I see on the TV, so I really appreciate someone who's been there. I've heard that, I've always wondered what happened to the Korean diaspora. I've heard that there's a significant Korean population in Kazakhstan.
Yes.
Was this true, not true?
That's true, because basically during World War II, before World War II, essentially Stalin had essentially transported people from Eastern Europe as well as other places, and then during World War II, exiled people in Kazakhstan because it's part of the Siberian region, essentially just putting them there too. When North Korea was in existence and such like that, there'd be people that go to North Korea go to Russia for employment and such like that.
How do you think things are for them? Are things for them pretty good for them?
Let me finish your question.
I'm so sorry. I'm so curious.
Those Koreans from North Korea who were allied with the Soviet Union early back in the late 40s, essentially had families go to Kazakhstan because it was part of the Soviet Union, but now they more affiliate with South Korea, and Kazakhstan has a lot of commerce between back, and so there are a lot of Koreans from North Korea, believe it or not, but they much prefer to be in Kazakhstan than they would ever to go back to things. But I had one student in particular who's at the University of Iowa now, and he went to get his master's degree at a university in Seoul, Korea, which I think is fabulous because he went from Nazarbayev University to Seoul, got his master's, and now he's getting his PhD at the University of Iowa. So basically, the key thing is that there is a significant Korean population there, but that's the nature of Kazakhstan. Is it's like all sorts of different ethnic groups being exiled there by Stalin or due to World War II or previous wars. And essentially Russia kind of conquered Kazakhstan in the 1800s. And so when the Soviet Union fell, finally Kazakhstan was considered free. They were really free of the old Russian system, but there are a lot of Russian speakers, ethnically Russian people that live in northern and eastern Kazakhstan that like being Kazakhs, and they much prefer to live and work in Kazakhstan than they did in Russia because it's less corrupt. It's still very corrupt, but less corrupt than Russia. But believe it or not, the most corrupt country in that whole area is Ukraine, and it always has been. So,
yeah, appreciate your insight on that. Yeah, that's very interesting. All right, let's go to the next question. I used to hang out with the Yang Gang over there, and the thing is that they had this idea called UBI, which got pretty popular for a while. It's kind of faded now. What's your
UBI?
position? UBI, Universal Basic Income.
Well,
Universal Basic Income.
Well, that's essentially a communist viewpoint of essentially giving people basic needs so they can just play video games all day in a modern version, or read books or whatever else, or just go out and sell drugs or whatever,
It could be that.
be stoned all day. And it's perverted because essentially there's no benefit to extra work or whatever because you get paid the same. And doctors are very underpaid in Cuba. They get paid less than people that work for the government, and it's perverted there too because they're all part of the universal basic. But that's a communist thing. It's just it's basically there's a whole bunch of rich, wealthy elites, and it doesn't matter how hard you work, you'll never get there because you got to get a ticket. But who knows where they sell the tickets? But the point is, they want everybody else poor. That's why the environmental movement essentially wants to essentially demand technology that'll make the price of gasoline $20 a gallon or $10 a gallon like it is in Europe. And they want the price of electricity to be $1 a kilowatt hour instead of the 15 cents it is in the US. And so it's a situation where if the price of electricity was $1 an hour or 50 cents an hour, that would mean a lot of poor people would get very cold during the winter, and or fuel was like $10 a gallon or other stuff like that, or heating oil was $10 a gallon. It would mean there'd be a lot of people that couldn't heat their homes. So.
I want to just take a little liberty myself and jump in. I've taken so many liberties in this particular podcast, but I appreciate you.
Well, you live in New York City. You live in New York City. What is the price of electricity where you live?
Right now, it's actually included in mine, so I'm good.
Well, the thing is, what is the price of electricity for the New York Power? It's probably about 25 to 30 cents a kilowatt hour, whereas in most of the country it's 15. And that's because essentially there are taxes on it and everything else. And the environmentalists want the price of electricity to be high. So essentially that means that there won't be people in apartments wasting energy on keeping air conditioners on.
There's a lot of problems in the environmental industry, and I really appreciate your pointing that out. I can actually speak to victims of they're actually rolling out these things on us, and
but they don't care about poor people dying when it's too cold in their apartments.
There's actually
or dying of heat exhaustion during the summer in New York City. It's like
there's people that have mold
in New York City an apartment when it's 90 degrees outside and no air conditioning. Yeah,
there's people with mold in their apartments that's literally sending them into asthma attacks and sending them to the hospital.
Course, yeah, because they can't afford to heat them
but instead of fixing this mold condition, they're giving them brand new electric heaters and coolers.
Well,
What's the
well,
priorities?
the
What's the
mold,
priorities here?
I'm a chemist. The only reason the mold gets here is it's not proper dehumidified and the temperature isn't properly modified after the place is built. So it's like if they don't clean it out and they
Right, I like
such
that.
like that, it's like, or,
Yeah,
and
they got to clean the vent
apartment
too. That's true.
buildings
They
are
got to
not
clean the
kept up,
vents.
you'll get mold. That's the way it works.
There's a couple of reasons too. Yeah, there's other like faulty materials, right? Yeah, not up to code stuff being used, old stuff being used,
Well,
right?
of
So I think
course,
stuff.
because essentially they would rather get the tenants evicted or leave, and then they can renovate and double the rent.
There's mad shenanigans going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So all right, cool. So
How much you
UBI,
pay for your apartment in Queens? How much you pay for your apartment?
it's a funny situation. Yeah, I can't really tell you about that. Yeah. I'll
Oh,
tell you
okay.
right now
Well,
that
yeah,
it's
you're
yeah.
embarrassed about it, but my
No,
house in
well,
Red Springs, North Carolina, my mortgage and
I
interest
don't really
is
have one, to
$500
tell
a
you the
month.
truth. I don't have one.
What?
I don't have one. I rent an office space, but I don't really have
Oh, yeah, I
I don't
understand.
have
I understand, and that's a travesty, but it's like, it's like the rich
also I
people
pay a
and the
lot
property
less.
owners want it to be that way.
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. Like I also do other things. Yeah. I'm technically not really, I got people's in the shelter. I'm not a shelter camp. I'm technically on the street sometimes. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Yeah. It's not doing my life. I
Well,
do what I want. Yeah. I'm doing
you
my
could
thing.
always move to North Carolina or some other place with its things, and you can
Look,
get
I
a
know you
proper
used to
job and
hobnob
get
with
a
them
nice
rich and wealthy
apartment.
people. Yeah. And some of them people is out here with me living this type of life. Some people is just meant to live like street life. You know what I mean? Not like it's all good or bad,
They
right? Not it's
want
always drugs
to.
related, but sometimes.
You know,
Hawaii, yeah, you were around that. There's some people who just kind of live on the edge, you know what I mean? Live on the outskirts.
In Hawaii, the rents are high on Oahu, but we had a house we rented in Hilo for $500 a month.
People find ways to end up. Yeah, people find ways, right? They know somebody or connect, or they're like in a shack that someone just kind of like constructed on some public land that people's not knowing about, you know what I mean, or something. They find a way, you know what I mean? There's always a community like that.
Well, but again, Americans have a choice as to where they can live, and people decide one way or another they want to stay in New York City.
Yeah.
That's fine. But in some respects, communists like De Blasio or whatever want the poor people to leave.
Hey, all right. So we got the UBI. That was good. Answer that one. I'm happy that you're not a panderer, right? Yeah, we have your own opinions. That's great. Yeah. And I do encourage people to be cautious about it. A lot of things that they say are forced or weaponized against us. It is really the implementation for me, right? Yeah, I'm not really of any
What has been
particular
weaponized
ideology.
against? What do you mean?
Like welfare is actually weaponized against it can keep people dependent in certain ways when it's just rolled out like without intelligent design, when there's not really other when incentives are not really produced in a
well, the thing is,
yeah.
in New York City, what happens when essentially when Giuliani was in there was very different, but when De Blasio and the other Democrats came in, essentially they decreased the pay for cops. They got less cops in the street. They stopped stop and frisk, and essentially enabled people to. They changed the law so someone steals less than $1,000, they don't get prosecuted or they get on the state, or someone beats somebody up in the subway, they get a court appearance and then they're let go and other stuff like that. And that's on purpose.
I'm all in that. I'm all in that. I could tell you so many stories. You don't even know.
It's all the Democrats
from so many different levels.
but they trust on stupid people who continue to vote them into office. And I trust that you're not a stupid person.
I'm in New York City. I'm in the heart of all of that. Yeah, I'm in the heart of their strongholds. You know what I mean? New York City is definitely one of their strongholds.
Well, the thing is, when they vote for those people, they will get what they vote for, but they're not willing to stop voting for Democrats because they get some sort of payoff.
Okay, let's go to the next because I have my partners, so the UBI. The next one I'm going to ask about is I do actually support trans people. It is what it is. Yeah, I know we talked about it before, but let's talk about this question right here. Okay, we know that trans people face a lot of discrimination on the job, and I get it, right? Yeah, they're different, right? Yeah. They also face discrimination.
Well, the thing is, if they don't purposely draw attention to themselves with extreme dress or whatever, and they do a good job, they won't be. But if they want to shove it in people's face and everything else, they will be treated badly, because anybody that tries, if you work in a professional environment with a lot of tattoos on your face, you're not going to get hired and you'll get laughed at and discriminated against. So it's a
That's, I think
situation
there's some
where
fairness to that. I
the,
think that's, I think
the,
that's fair.
the militaristic ones, whatever else, and I as a Christian, but also I find it very sad because essentially the whole thing about the trans movement, it's eugenics. It's designed to sterilize, confuse people so that they will not have kids. And so that essentially they'll go away. The
I believe there
eugenics
is some
system
medical abuse going
started,
on, but yeah.
the eugenics system started under Woodrow Wilson in the early 1900s, and then got
Well,
Margaret
let me,
Sanger involved with, started Planned Parenthood, and essentially the whole point was to kill people of inferior races before they're born, and those and mentally disturbed or feeble, sterilize them so that they couldn't have kids, and that would include people with a mental illness or mental confusion because their parents mistreated them. And I find it very sad. But the point is, anybody that shoves their lifestyle and everything in the face of whatever will get discriminated against, because people do not want to be around in-your-face activists that say
Okay,
that
so
say you've got to treat me differently because I cut my balls off.
okay, that's good that we understand your position on that. But the question
But
is
how's
still,
someone gonna
the question hasn't really. Okay, let me
how's
finish the
someone
question.
gonna know if a person cut their balls off unless they're told that?
Good question. But okay, so let me just finish the question over here. So the thing is that we
Okay.
know that trans people face discrimination at the job. We know they just face discrimination at the, in housing. So a lot of times they find themselves needing, right, public housing. Now, this is a hypothetical question. Let's say that 10% of the people applying for public housing are trans, but only 2% of the people who get into public housing are trans. So we say, you know what, there's this weird discrepancy. Let's ask them what's going on. Right? You feel better.
Well, those numbers.
We're almost done. Okay, almost done. Go ahead. No, these are made up numbers. These are completely made up.
Well,
Okay.
that's the point. They're not.
Okay, just okay, but this is also to see how like you would like handle a situation like this
Okay.
hypothetically, right? Yeah. So okay, so they say, okay, we're getting beat up, we're getting discriminated against, right? And then they say, so now we see discrepancy, right? There's no law saying that you can discriminate against trans people, but we see these weird numbers that people are claiming, right? Yeah, right. You could bring this question. I don't know, right? It's up to you to decide how you want to take this, but now we see this claimed imbalance. What do you think is these people deserve fair access, right? Whether you agree with them or not, right? Yeah. Well, how can you assure a community like this fair access to government services?
Well, if you run a business, would you hire somebody who comes in with a huge ring through their nose like this, like a cow? Are you
Okay,
going to
like
hire someone?
look, I'm not saying
No, answer
look,
my question. You asked me a question, answer my question. Are you going to hire somebody that has a ring through their nose like this that looks like a cow, a big one, not a small one, a big one that looks like a cow that is essentially in front of your customers? Are you going to
I
discriminate?
worked at a tattoo
Sorry,
shop.
you got to work somewhere else?
I worked at a tattoo shop for a while. So
I'm not
yes,
talking about tattoos. I'm talking about in your face.
Yeah, that was my workplace, and the guy had big like nose things. Yeah, I had like spikes in the head.
Yeah,
The big ear things. I've been
but if
all
he
around those
applied for a
people.
job at a bank,
Vegan food co-op. I'm sorry,
but
bro.
if he applied for
I'm
a
around
job
those
at a
people,
bank, would he
man.
get a job at a
They
bank?
have these things.
No,
I'm around these. I'm in New York City, bro. Like, I'm sorry, man.
well,
They're
I
around here.
understand. I went to
It does
college in
happen.
New York City.
I'm
I
not
went
mad.
to
Like, I'm not saying
college
I'm for or
north of New
against it.
York City for 4
Look,
years.
you're allowed to have boundaries. I'm not saying you're wrong for that, right? I've seen other more extreme things, right? With like the drag queen story hour, and I'm saying like, that it can't work, right? Like you said before, if they are actually, but there are some
Well, let me
excesses,
give
like,
you.
I don't want to, hey, look,
Well,
we're
let
allowed
me
to have boundaries, but
well, you
once
asked.
again, the real question
Let me
here is,
give you an absurd example. Let me give you.
the real question is, how do you get these people fair access, right? Yeah, and this is public housing. This is like they're destitute.
My point
Go ahead.
is everybody will get fair access if they don't shove their lifestyle in other people's faces. Okay? It's a situation where people like to be around other people that like them, not angry people that want to shove their lifestyles in their
Hey,
faces.
look, some people get triggered by MAGA people, not me, man. You know what I mean? Like
No, I'm
some
not
people
talking
get
about that.
triggered
I'm
by
talking
the
about
nose
people.
thing. Like I can't control that. Like go ahead, who cares?
I'm talking about 6'4" guys that go around walking with a dress and then say to somebody at McDonald's, a clerk behind a McDonald's, saying if the person doesn't call them by their proper pronoun, like just says "oh" or something like that, then they yell at them. And it's a situation where one thing you need to understand about the trans things, it's essentially a eugenics plan. It's just a more modern version of eugenics plan to sterilize people so that they won't have kids. And
Okay.
and this is in the 1950s, Black teenagers were essentially girls were sterilized by force because they did not want them to have children. Okay. This is just a more modern version of doing it by things because the educational establishment confuses younger people who have miserable family situations where their father hates their mother and their mother hates their father. So yes, they're going to be confused about what sex they should be because they just want to have people be nice to them.
So they're
So
confused, right? They're trying to get like maybe some government services. If it's not
no,
public housing, could
I'm
be like
talking about
healthcare, something,
that's
right? They're
just
trying
the
to get some kind
nature.
of,
That's
yeah.
the nature of the family situation they're in. They get confused and whatever else. But the point is, everybody will get government services properly, and if they act appropriately for others and don't shove their lifestyles in other people's faces and want acceptance against someone else's morals. For example, there was a guy that had sex with his boyfriend in the Senate chamber. Do you think he should have been fired?
What if there's some kind of evidence of
Answer my
discrimination?
question, please.
I'm sorry. Okay. So that's like
There was
one
a guy
instance,
that
right?
had sex in the
Okay.
Senate chamber with his boyfriend in public in front of cameras. Do you think he should have been fired? Well, most people would say, of course, yes, because the Senate chamber is not for
Was it on purpose, or
people.
was it by, what were they like, like they thought everything was shut down and they
You didn't
got
see the
caught?
video.
Or no, I
You
didn't know, but
obviously
like,
didn't see
you know
the
what I mean? Like
video.
if the event was over and they thought everybody went home
Oh,
and they just had
please,
like a
give me a
little
break.
thing, I'm not happy about it, but
He did it
but if
on
they
purpose
did it like
to
on
say F
purpose in
you to
front of
his
the camera like
bosses.
this, I'm gonna get some views or something. Like this is like they did it like to make a scene, or they did it to be flashy, like definitely fire them, you know what I mean? But if they were like after hours, like I'm not happy, I'm not proud about it, you know what I mean? Like you gotta fire the guy who ruined his whole life. Like you're really messed up, bro. Like this is not cool, you know what I mean? But if it was everything was shut down, it was after hours, they snuck in the quickie,
No,
like yeah, you
no,
effed up.
it
I'm
was
gonna
an
fire him.
FU
It's
on
not good,
purpose
yeah.
to the bosses and everything else.
How'd it go down?
And,
How'd it go down? I don't know how it went down. Did
uh,
it go down like
but
that?
you're changing the subject and missing my point. My whole point about
Okay.
all this is anybody that does in your face and say, accept me or else I'm going to file a lawsuit against you, or else and things like that. Of course, they'll get discriminated against. People don't want to be around others who are purposely assholes. Okay? People like
You
being
know,
around friendly people, not someone who shoves their personal lifestyle into
okay.
their face.
So back to the question right before, right? Whether you agree with them or not, right? Yeah. How will you assure these people fair access to government services?
They already have, by law, people of whatever sexual orientation already has access. But the thing is, if they want to shove a different sexual orientation
Okay.
or confusion in someone's face, they're not going to get access
Okay, I
because
got it.
people do not want extreme activists around them because normal people do not know how to act around them to avoid getting beaten up if they say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
okay. No, that's fine.
People
That's fine.
on
It's good to
drugs,
know.
people on drugs
I'm
are,
clear now. I got it. I got it now. I got it. Okay.
and
Let's
that
talk about,
includes women that get testosterone. They tend to get much more angry than those that don't. And guys who essentially decide to get their balls off, yes, it's going to affect them emotionally, and so they're going to be hostile at those that pushed it.
I do have medical experience, and I do actually recommend people before they modify themselves. I do also encourage more caution in that and less buying of solutions. But I do not.
Well,
I do also
we're
support people
talking
that
about a
decide
situation
to
where children are
transition if
forced
they
to
feel that's
do
right for
this.
them.
We're not talking about adults that decide to do it on their own, but they got to accept that when they make choices like that, there are consequences, and it has nothing to do with discriminating. It has to do with the fact that they're making themselves on purpose odd and then saying we want to be treated like normal.
Okay.
When they're purposely not normal, they have an in-your-face attitude, and that's the thing is, okay?
I'm not mad at that. Okay, so it's good for us to know,
When
right?
I was
That's why
driving,
the interview
when
is
I
here
was
to learn about your positions.
look,
Exactly. Right?
when
Okay.
I was driving a cab in Philadelphia as a Christian, okay,
Yes.
when I picked up hookers and drove them around while they were looking for tricks, okay, I didn't preach at them from the front seat or whatever, because I had a job to do a job to essentially to get them for where they wanted to be and hopefully get a tip. Okay.
Right.
But it wasn't my job as a job. It wasn't my job to shove my Christianity in their face and say things like that. So I basically had, it's known as customer service. But the thing is, if I had the position where I was a jerk to my customers and essentially forced my lifestyle down their throat by essentially saying, no, I'm really a girl with a down voice. I'm really a girl, so you have to call me ma'am, or essentially to say to them, oh, sorry, you misgendered me. Are they going to give me a tip? No, they're going to think he's just another jerk that's just jerking me off. Okay. The whole point of
I can, I can accept that. I'm not really, I'm not agreeing, but that's okay. We're not going to agree on everything. I want to just finish up the rest
well,
of
I
the.
don't expect these people to vote for me. I just hope that Republicans will in North Carolina.
No, there's a lot of my friends who actually have similar views. So
now I have
I work with a lot of people. I'm not against what you're saying.
Well, I have another question for you though. Do you think a trans man should be like Leah Thomas should be allowed to enter when they're mediocre 169 out of 169 on the list, but then they decide to put keep their penis on, and essentially they decide to race swimming as a woman, they win the awards. Do you think they should win, essentially destroy women's sports by?
Can I say yes and no?
Huh?
Can I say yes and no?
Oh, why would you say yes?
They should create another league. They should create another league that includes them. Right, yeah, that includes trans and another group that doesn't, if they want to do that, right? Yeah.
The thing is, if they want co-ed sports, they should get in a team with co-ed sports, and they will lose to normal men instead of being guys.
It could include that. It could include that as well, right? Or it could be an exclusive category, or any combination thereof.
My point is, it's going to destroy women's sports at the college and high school level, because essentially guys are more properly built to be better at swimming and everything else. And you talk about running, whatever else, that it's not fair.
My response to that is
the pelvis is different.
My response is, even though I understand the concerns, and I'm not really 100% for it overall, I am for it because you know why? The thing is that these people, we say life isn't fair. You know what I mean? And so many other. Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish?
No,
I know it's horrible. I'm not. Don't take it at face value. Don't take it at face value. You need to add my other bullet point. Go ahead. You can attack it if you want, but that's not all there is to it. But go ahead. Go ahead.
I know what your view is. You're asking. You want to interview me. My point is, for women's sports at the high school and college level, women need a way to essentially excel in their things without going against somebody with steroids. Okay.
Yeah.
Whether it be a woman who's taking testosterone or whatever, doping up like they used to do in the Soviet Union. So they got big women who got testosterone or whatever, who win all the.
But what about the other way? Why do you only care about it when they win? Like, what about all the women who turned into men and they can't win anything? Like, is it just too bad for them? Like, sucks to be you.
Well,
like,
the thing is, if a woman,
why don't you care about them?
Look, the whole point is, if a woman decided to become a man and play baseball,
then they get their butts whooped
the whole time.
Then they can't win. Like, I mean, it's
of course they can.
That's too far. I mean, they can win something, but yeah, it's a challenge. It's not the same. The numbers are not the same. This is clear. You're not wrong on that, right? The data supports that, right? Yeah, there's an advantage.
The whole point is,
can't argue that. Yeah, you're right. I'm not going to discount that. You're not wrong in that. There is a documented something's up. You're not wrong. I'm sorry.
For example, if you look at Riley Gaines, who essentially, as part of the University of Kentucky team, was forced to put up with a guy that essentially
they lived through so much unfairness, you know what I mean? And they can win one time. Let them win once, damn it. You know what I mean? They don't get to win anything else in life. Give them one. Okay, that's how you want to be. I ain't mad, but you know what I mean? Like, I get where you're coming from, but that's how I feel. Let them win one thing. You know what I mean? That's me. But look, you could. I'm not against you. I'm not. I get where you're coming from. You're not wrong, right? There is a clear data, like they have an advantage. Like, so let's stop pretending. You know what I mean? Like, you're not wrong. Okay?
In high school baseball, I wasn't very good. I was the scorekeeper. I got a letter for being the scorekeeper, but I mostly sat on the bench. Okay, But the point is, essentially, there's nothing wrong with saying the bench for being involved with high school.
Hey, I'm not saying I'm all the way right either. I'm
not
not all the
getting-
way. I know that. I know I'm not all the way right, but I'm just trying to make it. You know, what I mean, I know I'm not all the way right, but I'm just saying, let them win something. That's just how I am.
They're
You've
not
been a
women.
dad. You know what I'm talking about. You
Well,
have students. You know what I mean. Sometimes they don't get all the answers right, but you're like, I gave you a B anyways. You know what
I
I mean?
don't do
Because I know
that.
you're trying.
No,
Because
when
I
I'm
know you're
teaching
trying.
chemistry, they got to earn their
Yeah.
grade, not because
You
I
never
like them.
you never help the student just a little bit, even
No,
once.
no.
Well, okay, I
If they earn the grade,
respect, but I'm that kind of guy. If you try real hard,
then you shouldn't be a teacher.
not all the
Because
way,
the whole
not all
point
the
is
way.
about
Look, I
people
work
get
with you. I
value
work
from
with
stuff
you.
they
Yeah,
earn.
you got to come up eventually. Yeah, okay, you got to come up eventually. But
People learn by
I'll
making
work with you.
So,
All right. Okay. Hey, respect, man. I appreciate that. Okay, so that's one group right there. Let's go on to the next one over here. Another group that works with the disabled, and right now, people with disabilities are allowed to be paid sub minimum wage. Now,
well,
the
that's
thing is,
against the law. That's against the law.
it's not actually, but
Yes, it is against the law. It's against the American Disabilities Act that they cannot uh, 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 they cannot discriminate against disabled people. Things. All they have to do is file a lawsuit against their employer, and they'll usually win.
okay, so you're for. Okay, it's for it. That's good. Okay.
No, I'm not for it.
Oh, you're
I'm
not.
not for
Okay.
discrimination against disabled people. I'm not.
No, you're
For
for minimum wage, at least minimum
against
wage
people.
for people with disabilities. Like they should get at least minimum
No,
wage. You're for that.
if someone does a good job and earns their pay, they should be treated like anybody else.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. That's exactly what I said.
Designed for that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're for people with disabilities getting the rights that everybody else has. That's exactly what I said. Yeah.
Well, of course, because
Cool. Yeah, that's
it's
good.
not something they chose to do. They were injured in an accident, or they were born with epilepsy, or they were born with a club foot, or whatever else, and
Respect.
so they should not be, or they were
Penalized.
veteran who got their leg blown off. All of that means that they got to be treated like everybody else. And
I'm with it.
so,
Thank you. Okay. The last part I'm going to ask about is I don't know if you've heard of this thing called right to repair. Have you ever heard of that term?
in what context? I know it.
Okay. So the thing is that this issue has hit in multiple contexts. One of them
It has
was
to do with Apple saying you can't have people repair our devices.
that's one big part of it, right? There's also the farmers and that were fighting John Deere because they had like exclusive control of the tractors. Biden even had to do it for the military. They had to set it because the contractors were all making exclusive right to repair their vehicles. So Biden said enough with that, right? We got to be able to repair our own equipment out in the field. We can't have these exclusive contracts going on. But still for consumers, it's being rolled out mostly through Apple products, but actually system-wide with cars now, right? Yeah, like Tesla, you can only get it serviced at the Tesla factory, stuff like that.
My first computer was an Atari, and that's on purpose. I think the only value for Apples and Macintoshes is they make great applesauce. So the point is, it's a private company. If Apple wants to only allow the peripherals that are made by them to work with their equipment, that's fine. That's why I love PCs, because I can modify. I've got parts of my computer that I'm using right now that are 20 years old and doing just fine. I'm talking about the case. I replace the motherboard periodically and the video cards periodically and other stuff like that, but I love my computer. I've had a computer hobby since I was 10. But the whole point is that Apple, as a private company, decide for planned obsolescence, so that basically iOS 17 will not work on an iPhone 6. That's by design, because they want people to be forced to pay it again and again. But the only reason it works is because people still want to pay over $1,000 for a stupid cell phone when mine was 200 and it does all the things that we really want to do. I got a Motorola 5G Ace, which is perfect for my needs. But the point is, do I need all sorts of bells and whistles that an iPod 7, an iPhone 17 would have, or 15, or whatever the latest version is? No, few people do need all the things. So basically, I think it's stupid to carry around a cell phone that's over. I'd rather have a computer that costs $1,000 and carry a hard drive, or carry an SSD around if I need to use a different one. But again, it's a situation where if people want the panache of Apple, they're gonna pay for it through the nose, and it just goes by Steve Jobs thinking he was entitled to park in handicap zones because he was entitled.
Okay.
So, you know, it's just the panache BS that's endemic in the system. And do they have good hardware? Yeah, but good luck getting an Apple iPad repaired at a neighborhood thing, because Apple has a point of not letting independent repair people do it. But I think the federal government does have a role is perhaps changing the law to require companies to allow anybody to repair them. But there are technicians that are not things who can repair those things. You just got to look for them. But again, it might not be against the warranty, break the warranty. But the whole point is, again, Apple has a product they want to keep selling, and they want it to get obsolete, so they have to throw it away, get another one.
Yeah, and they're going to great lengths. The thing is that now
Well, you asked about Tesla. You asked about Tesla or electric cars.
okay.
If you've got a Chevy Volt, that loses a little battery cell in the battery itself, how much do you think it would cost to replace the battery in a Chevy Volt?
Almost the price of the car.
$30,000. Okay. Whereas if you got a normal Ford Taurus or a normal VW Jetta, like my car that I love driving and get 45 miles to the gallon, basically it's very easy to replace a part, and it could be like $50. Another example, what do you suppose the remote charging stations, where do they get the remote charging stations for electric vehicles? Where do they get their electricity?
Burning coal.
Yeah, or they have diesel generators in the back of the
Yeah.
facility. So does it save fossil fuel? No. All it does is just convert it into electricity and generate a lot of heat, and then they got electricity. But then the car can only drive 300 miles or 250 miles before it needs a recharge again. It might take 4 hours.
And I
So
have a feeling that Nancy Pelosi's like actually like neck deep in investments inside of the electric companies.
well, yeah, and good luck being able to drive an electric car in Minnesota during the winter. I'm sorry, batteries aren't very efficient when it's below zero the whole day.
I had a Prius for a while. I did love that thing, but
Sorry?
you're not wrong about cold does affect the batteries. You're right. That's true. Yeah. Hey man, so yeah, Michigan is very cold. That's true, actually. All right, so let's go on to now the thing is, as a federal position, the city takes care of like real estate stuff like that. Federal takes care of like the military, like immigration. Right now, a hot topic here in New York City is the migrant crisis. What's your take on that whole thing? It's a hot topic right now.
Well, the Democrats at de Blasio and others made it a sanctuary city where the customs enforcement could not come in and deport people, whether it be MS-13 or other illegal aliens that are in the sweatshops in New York City. The sweatshops in New York City have been going on for decades, whether it be underpaying people for pennies per piece or whatever else in the 1910s to whatever else, ignoring the law. And essentially, they just want to continue to do the same thing. So they're essentially letting illegal immigrants so they can underpay and essentially use as slave labor. But you folks keep voting for these people who allow this to go on. So it's like, you asked for it, sorry. And it's not going to change as long as you keep electing de Blasio and others instead of people like Giuliani, who really did clean up the streets.
Okay. Let's
I remember when Giuliani was mayor. It was a great city to visit. It was, even Bloomberg was mayor. He had some common sense because he wanted it to be a beautiful city that it was. Even President Trump likes New York City, but he couldn't change anything going on if they wanted to decide to make a sanctuary city. San Francisco's even worse because they've been pooping on the sidewalks for years. So
I think the most controversial thing for Bloomberg with the ties to Giuliani was the stop and frisk. I don't think they besides those ties, did they have any other significant?
Well, the stop and frisk was very good for getting guns off the street and essentially stopping thugs that would go around and purse snatch and others who essentially caused armed robbery in different bodegas and other small stores in the area that couldn't afford security. And essentially those that wanted to change it and everything else, and as Bernard Cleric will explain to anybody who asks them, it's a situation where when the police are not allowed to do their job and get the criminals off the streets, the criminals will be things. And if the DA will not prosecute them, like the current DA will not prosecute them, but is going after people with political differences, it's just a tragedy because it affects the normal people in New York City. So, you know,
All right. I have to admit that's not my position, but hey, I appreciate you telling me about it. I appreciate, you know,
I love visiting Manhattan. I love visiting Manhattan in the late 70s. It was a very different, but now I wouldn't really want to go there at all. So, I remember going to see David Letterman at NBC. I wasn't worried about walking the streets when David Letterman had his show, everything else in 2004. So, but that was under Giuliani and their type.
What do you think about the whole when you see like TPP? You heard about things like you know, NAFTA. What do you feel about like trade as in terms of the United States role in that?
Well, I generally believe that the federal government has a responsibility to regulate international commerce, and basically I think it's in the American interest to have to trade back and forth with other countries, to even hire labor in India and Vietnam to make stuff for us and everything else, because it helps the economies in both those places and such like that. But they also have a responsibility to not let intellectual property they call IP essentially be stolen by the governments. So essentially the governments can then make mock-offs essentially of American products and they call them apples, when in reality they're not, and they're essentially going to pay things. And that's part of the problem with the whole system, is that the Biden administration and Democrats want to push for all electric vehicles, when in reality all the raw materials and everything else that comes from that, whether it be solar panels and windmills and everything else, that all comes out of China. And the reason it does is because the labor in China is very cheap, because they employ slave labor. They force people to work for almost nothing. Well, again, that's not very good for the people of China overall. But again, it's a situation where they decide that they're gonna rip off gullible people in the U.S. to essentially. But if they were really concerned about the environment, they would deregulate the nuclear industry so that we could have a lot more nuclear power plants that are safe and appropriately regulated. So essentially the price of electricity for customers in New York City and Charlotte and Raleigh, North Carolina, could be 15 cents a kilowatt hour and remain that way for the next 2 decades, because we've got a proper use of nuclear power resources.
What's your position on the war? Like the Israel, the Ukraine stuff?
Well,
both of them.
Well, let me give you an example. When I was in Iraq, when I was working in Iraq, I tried to start this story a little bit, but President Obama was in there. President Obama oversaw the rise of ISIS in northern Iraq and Syria. And basically the rules of engagement for American forces that were there were essentially, if you're shot at with a whole bunch of rockets and rifles, you could shoot back a slingshot. Well, basically, when President Bush became president in 2017, he asked the leaders in Washington, the generals in Washington, how long would it take for us to get the ISIS out and everything else? And they said, sorry, Mr. President, it'll take about 6 years, because they're just too entrenched and we can't do anything about it. Well, he then went to the people down closer to the field, asked them how to do it, and they said, if we properly equip and support the Iraqi army in Peshmerga, we can get them out really quickly. Well, by the time I started working at the American University in Iraq in August of 2016 under Obama, by the time I left in May, essentially ISIS was essentially almost gone from northern Iraq and Syria, and ISIS has not been a problem because essentially the Peshmerga, the Kurdish troops, essentially the Iraqi army, essentially destroyed ISIS throughout the whole country because they had the proper support to do it. And that is what the military should be used for, to get in, win, and then leave. For example, in World War II, the only reason Americans got involved was because Adolf Hitler declared war on us. We went in and won. We got involved in World War II in the Pacific because the Japanese Hirohito declared war on us. We went in and won. We essentially helped get Japan out of China and Indonesia and Southeast Asia, because essentially we beat the Japanese because they bombed Pearl Harbor and declared war on us. That's the purpose of our military, is to get in, win, and get out, and let the governments work it out too when they proper support. And I'm very proud and happy that I was in Iraq for a year, because that shows the contrast. But I disagree with some people that say the Iraqi wars were a bad thing, particularly the one in 2003, because I think it was a good thing that Saddam Hussein, who was actively supporting a Stalinist, communist, he essentially was actively supporting Palestinian terrorists, just like Iran is now. He was actively supporting Palestinian terrorists to essentially kill innocent people in Israel, as well as kill the Kurds and other minorities in Iraq. And essentially, President Bush decided after 9/11 to go in and take Saddam Hussein out. And I think overall, based on that, it was very good for Iraq, because the Stalinist Baathists were essentially destroyed as a force. And that's where ISIS came from, was because the Muslim Brotherhood, which was supported by Obama, essentially perpetrated a myth that they were supposedly, democracy of it, when in reality, they just wanted to rule things for themselves. And so it's a situation where what happened in Israel, with a whole bunch of people slaughtered and taken hostage because they came on, they came on, gyrocopters or whatever they used to get across the border. It's a situation where killing thousands of people, innocent people, and then hiding underneath hospitals, mosques, other stuff like that, and then saying, oh, Israel just wants to kill our innocent kids and whatever else. Well, they're hiding in the basement, using them as shields. Well, it's the same thing what happened with ISIS in Iraq, is that they use the civilians as shields. So they don't care about life, and they don't care the life of their own people. So yes, we have a responsibility to help Israel get rid of terrorists, Hamas, and essentially drive them off the map. So
okay, I do have to ask, just help me clarify one thing. So the thing is that earlier you said that Ukraine is very corrupt, correct?
yeah, it's one of the most corrupt countries. It has been for decades. One of the most corrupt countries in Eastern Europe. And
I mean, okay, so I think part of that, right, was I feel like Hunter Biden was involved. I feel like there was pictures.
Well, he was, but it goes even further back from that, because when I was teaching in Kazakhstan for 2011 to 15.
Right. So, well, actually, this just really paints to this part, right? Yeah. So earlier you said, right, that America should protect its interests and get involved in international trade. But isn't that really kind of a way, like Hunter Biden? Isn't he like kind of like, yeah, maybe it's corrupt, but it's kind of like the U.S. inserting its interest into Ukraine to try to like, okay, so
the Biden crime family.
I just feel like, okay, go ahead.
The Biden crime family has been essentially milking all sorts of people, because he was an important senator for many years as head of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and essentially the Hunter Biden and all the other people as part of that is essentially.
Yeah, Ukraine was blind influence, obviously. I mean, this is corruption.
But that's the nature of corruption. They buy off corrupt politicians in the West. The Soviet Union did that too, with the Rosenbergs and the other Soviet spies who were in the U.S. They're trying to foment things, and because.
But that creates right for
But
Biden,
you asked about
who's an
Ukraine.
American to cash out on the Ukrainians.
Well, you
like they're protecting their interest in their trade.
Well, right? The thing is, Ukraine is an artificially created country, because Stalin started Ukraine by taking different parts of different countries: Poland, Hungary, and the other countries around that were essentially taken pieces off, and then put under one republic in the Soviet Union, which was Stalin called Ukraine. And that includes Tartars, that includes all sorts of different tribal groups. And the people that forget that essentially at the beginning of World War II, there was what was called a Stalin-Hitler pact, which essentially they decided to meet in the middle of Poland and say that everything east of that was Stalin's, everything west of that, and then both sides decided we're going to kill all the Jews and the minorities in this area. And the Nazis, essentially National Socialists, were working with the Bolshevik socialists to essentially destroy minorities and others in the middle. And then Adolf Hitler decided to break the thing and say, and repeat what Napoleon tried to do and say, yes, the Aryan race, we're going to go in and destroy the Slavs.
It's so hard for me to believe anything about history.
Sorry?
It's so hard for me to believe anything about history because I see how much things are misreported today. So I'm like, if I can't even believe the news that I see about what's going on today, like what's the chances that I could learn about something that happened like 20, 30 years ago without like...
You got to look in the right places, and you can't rely on the mainstream media in New York City, which is essentially bought and paid for. And for example, on the YouTube, I'd recommend you watch the Duran, Duran, and they've been accurate for over a year regarding what's going on in Ukraine. And essentially what happens when Ukraine gets billions of dollars from the US, essentially it goes to arms traffickers, and all the arms that are sent there get sent to Hamas and other countries, and then they're stuck with the residue. And essentially Ukraine is putting up its kids and old people now to go into a Russian grinder, where essentially hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians die because essentially the Russian government got fed up with Ukrainian only speakers, the Nazis, who essentially say Ukrainian is the only language allowed in Ukraine. And essentially they decided that they were going to destroy and drive out people who are native speakers of Russian. That's why I brought up the point. In Kazakhstan, it's different because there are three official languages: Kazakh, Russian, and English. And basically, the Russian people of Russian ancestry have no fears about worrying about Kazakhs throwing missiles into their region in Osk-Kamenogorsk or Pavlodar because the Kazakhs don't like them.
I appreciate it because you were actually there. Yeah,
well, I was there, but Russia took over Kazakhstan way back in the 1740s, I believe.
I know.
And Russia and Poland were fighting over territory all the way back to 1700. And in the early 1800s, they had Napoleon that went all the way from France that tried to go.
All the historical stuff, right? Like Iraq war that's in the past. I'm really more concerned about today. I'm so sorry, but now we're going to enter actually the free portion. This is the free portion of the discussion forum. So we've passed most of the questions, and we're pretty much good here. Besides asking your contact information, all the other stuff, which is definitely going to happen before the end. But okay, so right now, you're in North Carolina, which is actually a key swing state, right? Yeah, it's a critical state in the voting process, an early voter. You think you're going to get a vote from Trump? You seem like a pretty diehard Trump fan. You seem like a pretty loyalist.
I supported
President. Race.
Well, I came out in public and endorsed President Trump back in October with a Substack. Go to my Substack, you can see the press announcement I put out that I was supporting President Trump.
Is Trump coming through North Carolina?
Well, he was in North Carolina last summer before I arrived because I sold myself.
He's probably coming back soon.
Great Springs and moved up to Wake County, but he was at the state convention, I believe, in June of last year. And
he's probably scheduled to come back soon. What do you think?
What?
He's probably scheduled to come back soon. What do you think?
Well, that's great, but it's a situation where basically he has his own hopes and whatever else. And
you think he'll endorse you? Do you have a primary opponent, or
well,
are you
I honestly have no idea because when I grew up in Swarthmore, it depends. When I grew up in Swarthmore, basically a lot of Swarthmore College people hated the people at Penn Wharton School because they were the business people that were conservative, whereas the rest of Penn was flaming liberal. And President Trump went to Penn Wharton, which I appreciated. But the fact that I'm from Swarthmore and my parents went to Swarthmore College, he might be suspect that I might be pretending. But no, I'm not pretending. But the point is, I'm running my race or whatever else, and I'm proud and happy to support President Trump, but I'm not gonna. But if he finds it that he wants to endorse me, that's wonderful. But basically, my job is to try and replace Deborah Ross, and not ask for endorsements. And I'd rather earn one and then be happily surprised if someone thinks. But I sent out a press release that basically, because the endorsement game has started in North Carolina with all sorts of people endorsing others. And I decided to announce the fact that my cat endorsed me for Congress because he likes the fact that I keep him fed and watered and clean out his litter box. Well,
Okay.
that's the job of a congressman. They got a responsibility to keep, to essentially do the essentials to represent their local people. So that's what I want to do, because the Democrat corruption here in Wake County essentially is tragic, because essentially Deborah Ross only supports her people and those with common political interests. Whereas any normal person that goes to her office for help for some federal issue is, if they find out they're Republican or conservative, or voted for Trump once, or voted.
I think you're a very serious
They won't
candidate.
get
Not
help.
only yeah, I
Huh?
think you're a very serious candidate. I think Trump should definitely look at your campaign because, number one, right? Not only have you run for office before, number two, your wife also ran and won her primary. That's actually right.
Well, I
Your
also got a
family has
PhD
experience
from
with
North Carolina State
elections.
University, which is here in Raleigh. So maybe that'll be something. I got a PhD from a local university.
Your wife's not going to go crazy. I mean, she's you know, in the
Well,
game
unfortunately,
herself.
my wife died
So this is
last
good.
July. My
Oh,
wife
I'm
died
sorry.
last July.
Sorry.
So,
Okay, well,
so I that's part of why I got in this race, because essentially it's trying to get rid of another feminazi. Like she went against Patsy Mink. Well, I'm going after Deborah Ross for the same reasons. And my platform that's in my brochure is essentially the same it was in 1998, and my wife's was in 1998. So,
okay.
How
can people find out?
my YouTube channel showing that me being interviewed by people in New Hampshire about what my views were, but I was 20 years younger then. So
I saw that was on your website, right? Yeah. How
yeah,
can people
right.
find out more about your campaign? Maybe you have social media that you post up. They can follow like upcoming events and stuff.
Well, my website is kept simple. It's G Douglas with 2 S's, GDouglass.us. That's it.
Okay. Do you publish on social media regularly, Twitter or Facebook?
Well, I have a Substack that I've been running for 2 years, and it has all the stuff about the Twitter files, the Durham report, and all the stuff related to the Durham investigation, where he essentially exposed the deep state and how the Clinton campaign was behind all the Russian hoaxes. And
when you go to this guy's webpage, okay, at first it's going to tell you to subscribe. It's going to ask you for money. You got to
no, it says free. You can
but
be free.
You got to close the thing, right? I went to pass the thing. Yeah, you got to close the thing. That's all. Right?
Oh, that's
don't
so
walk
hard.
away because it's not over, right? The way it throws up in your face, right? You might think that you got to pay. You don't. Okay, just close the box. You get access to the site.
Well, that's the way Substack works. It is what I chose, but basically I started my Substack. The earliest post on there I think is from 2021, before I even considered being a candidate. And I decided to use it for the campaign because my job is to be an educator, and this is something I do is fun. And if you learn chemistry in college, my job as a retired chemistry teacher is to reach equilibrium, and I'm at a happy equilibrium doing what I can. So
it's cool, man. Yeah, it is all about equilibrium. That's true. That's what chemistry is, right? Yeah.
yeah,
Coming to the final state, or the
that's right.
equilibrium state.
This
right?
is
There's
part
no
of my
final state. It's
equilibrium.
equilibrium state. Yeah. Cool, man. So what do people have to look forward to, right? Well, I hinted at the possibility of Trump endorsement. I mean, I think so. You'd seem pretty clear-cut Republican.
To be honest, I hope he does. I hope he does.
Yeah.
But I'm very thankful. My cat likes me, and my dogs like me. And
well, he needs help too. So, how much of a following do you have? You've been politically active?
Well,
but I don't know in this area. Have you been political in the area where you are now?
All I can go on is I've got over 7,000 votes in all the elections I've been in Hawaii, and I came in 3rd out of 9 in the primary there, having a lot of fun. I came in 2nd out of 4 in the primary there. My wife won the primary there. I ran against the incumbent.
Contact his petition team. You know what I mean?
Spending very little money. And even this campaign, I very well may win. I'm one of the top 2 candidates. And I've spent less than $5,000. I've raised and spent less than $5,000. So the Democrats are very paranoid, saying, who is supporting G. Douglas's campaign? And it's like, oh, I just been going to meetings and getting the Republicans. It's easy.
Okay, interesting. All right, cool. So
I don't sell bumper stickers or yard signs or other stuff to make the streets of Raleigh more ugly. It's like, I don't see a point of pretending that yard signs do anything to make the neighborhoods look nicer. All they do is look like trash.
do you have any anything for people to look forward to? You got something coming up?
Well, I've got a bunch of meetings I'm going to, like tomorrow night. I've got a meeting up in Wake Forest. I'm gonna get three or 4 minutes. I spoke there last month. I recently, a few weeks ago, at a debate with Deborah Ross called Unite the Vote. That's on my Substack. It's also on my YouTube channel. They can pull up Douglas Educational Services on YouTube and watch my debate with Deborah Ross and my other stuff that I've done for the campaign. So basically, Deborah Ross accused me of being mean because I confronted her on a record. And when a feminist goes into victim mode, it means I've won. So basically, all I can say is if I continue to annoy her and make her side freak out, all it does is earn me media. And it will be a crazy year here in North Carolina and even in Wake County, because a lot of people are fed up. There are a lot of Black Hispanic people that essentially are very, very upset that people from Guatemala and others coming in illegally are essentially going to take the entry jobs away from American citizens. And that's all the fault of the Biden administration and Deborah Ross, who represents them in Congress. So
Okay, that's pretty much the interview. I really appreciate it. And just so you know, folks, I know a lot of people that I watch have will have different things. Some people support it, some people be critical. But one thing I want to talk, I know there's a lot of hate on the Republicans right now. But the fact of the matter is that in this program right here, we've had 2 Republicans cooperating and taking place, and only 1 Democrat so far. And this was true also in the last time when we did it in 22. The Republicans right now, the data shows that they're more willing to have a conversation, even if they don't agree with you. And as offensive as you may feel, right? Yeah, like, oh, these guys, blah, 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 they're not accepting. Like, just look at the evidence once again, who's participating in the series, and look at the actual results. Okay, just saying. Okay, thank you.
Well, I gave grades in my chemistry classes, not dependent on someone's sexual orientation or what political party they believed in.
On data.
I basically graded all their exams based on not even knowing the names, went through to see how they solved the problems correctly or not. And everybody that got an A earned them in my chemistry classes. Well, it's the same thing here. I treat everybody the same because the way I would like to be treated myself. And it's a situation where if I do get elected for the U.S. Congress for the 2nd District, I will help all the constituents that I can, whatever persuasion they are, in nonpartisan ways if it's in my ability. But it's not as if someone wouldn't know what my positions are, because they're very, very clear in my brochure and in my things like that. The worst case scenario is they could always vote for the other person. So I don't really, all I'm trying to do is educate the public and have them make educated decisions regarding who they're going to vote for. And unfortunately, there are too many people that go along with a union, a group, or whatever else because they don't want to stick out and stand for what they really believe. And that's part of the nature of the fact that things don't really change unless people are determined to think critically and vote based on being educated. And it's my job to be an educator.
Okay. Can I also, the thing is that I'm going to ask for a little indulgence for myself. Basically, the interview's good now. But just something for myself, I want to actually talk about the trans issue just one time, yeah? So the thing is that I know, have you ever heard of something called, there's people who are born hermaphroditic. They're born literally, right?
Well,
like, with both parts. Like it happens, like not there's so many of them. It's pretty rare. It does happen. Like, what do these people do? Like they're, like.
Well, it's very few. And for example, if someone is born with undescended testicles that don't ever descend, essentially they'll be sterile for the rest of their lives. And
there is actually a record of someone who had a testicle,
please,
who had a baby, actually had a baby.
Let me answer your question. Let me answer your question.
Yeah.
Basically, basically proper parents will let the child grow up based on what it decides it wants to be when the parents are treating them properly as a unique individual created by God for a certain reason. The problem comes with these trans people is that the mother is very, very angry at the father and takes it out on the little boy. The little boy gets very confused and says to himself, maybe if I was female, my mother would be nice to me. And
Okay.
then they decide to take on things like
One more
that.
thing, okay?
And it
I am
never,
okay.
ever works. It never, ever works because the little boy is still going to be like the father she hates.
I'm not going to deny that it might be part of it, but I just like to make a couple more points here.
It's a choice people make to essentially to get a tattoo or to cut off body parts, whatever
Okay, so
else. Children are not able to make their choices because they're easily persuaded that they're broken, they need fixing, and so they
I
do
agree there's
a
reasons for
certain
concern,
thing, and essentially they
but
do
yeah.
not let nature take its course, and that the child decide for itself when it reaches adulthood and can make an educated decision. The
Well, yeah,
problem
okay.
comes from, you really need to read up on the history of eugenics. The problem comes from people with an agenda that want to essentially sterilize all people with a mental illness or confusion or whatever else because they feel like these people do. Down syndrome in particular, Down syndrome babies being killed in the womb because they have an extra chromosome.
But
And it's a
okay,
situation where in some respects it's no different when
there
Down
is
syndrome kids are killed or someone with undescended testicles are mistreated
as
by.
unpopular as it might sound, I will say that is part of it. There's right, yeah, I'm not going to say it's all of it, but I'll say right there it was right, yes, some eugenics going on, right? There is some attempt to target certain people.
Well,
This does happen.
how
I'm going to say that's
familiar
part
are
of
you?
it.
How
Okay, but
familiar are you? Please answer my question. How familiar are you with the history of eugenics?
I'm not a super master, but I know a little bit about a westernized, right? A lot of the history of eugenics is, by the way, covered up what happened in Asia, right?
It's
So,
very easy to learn something about it. All you have to do is Google search eugenics and Margaret Sanger, and you can read all about it in Wikipedia about the eugenics movement and what they essentially
right.
push for. It hasn't been changed much or whatever. Most of it's accurate. They even have references, and you can even look at the references to see that basically what they want is an elite white supreme thing, and everybody that doesn't fit their stereotype, their Aryan stereotype, of which is fundamentally that is essentially they want to be killed. And that includes the elderly when they get too much trouble. They want to essentially have the ability to euthanize them and say, sorry,
Okay,
your life has
but
reached the end of its usefulness. We're going to kill you now.
okay, but if I could just sort some, once again, some scientific studies, which once again, I don't trust all the scientific studies, okay, just because out there,
Well,
but there
I don't either because most of it is BS because
could be,
essentially the
could
people
be.
no, you need to understand the nature of the research and
I'm into science too, man. I'm in the
just
science field. I'm
just
admitting, yeah, the
watch
lot
just
I've
watch
said I agree. You can't believe all of it, but let me tell you
just
what the
watch
studies
on
say.
YouTube Jordan Peterson interviewing the biologists and others who have essentially done the research and know what is really going on here with the mutilation of children, essentially without their consent, essentially because their parents pushed them one way or another to say they're unacceptable as God made them. We want them to be someone else. So the kids want their parents to like them, and so they go along with it. And then 5 years later, they regret it and realize they'll never have children.
I understand that's a
And
concern.
you
I
can't
understand,
put back on body
but
parts. Have you ever seen what happens with a girl that gets an artificial penis and part of her skin is wrapped around here, and then I saw a picture
kids are
on
gonna
the
do what
internet
kids are gonna do what kids are gonna
of a
do.
girl that essentially they made a penis that was 6 inches long and put it on that girl and essentially ripped off part of her arm to essentially manufacture it. And it's a monstrosity. It's like normal men would want a penis that is.
I'm concerned about the medical industry getting involved and
Of course,
profiting off of
it's all a
this.
scam because
That
essentially
is a real concern. But
Obamacare provided
yeah,
millions of dollars to that industry to do it because it's
but
covered under Obamacare.
can I throw this out there? Okay, so the thing is that when people have done studies on gay people, they've been found that they had like different brain topology. Like they said, like the size of the spheres was more symmetrical in
Well,
gay
most of that,
men and women, straight women. Also, one more thing is that they also said that there's a relationship between birth order, right? If you're born first, you're more likely to be heterosexual, and if you're born later, have you ever seen that study? You could look it up yourself if you want. Like these
Kinsey,
things,
well,
they may be different. Like honestly, I don't have any.
well, let me answer.
I don't defend them because
Let
I
me
honestly
answer.
have zero desire to dress as a
Well,
woman. I have zero. Like
well,
I don't
let
want
me
to do that at
answer.
all.
Let me
But
answer
I
your
still, yeah,
question.
okay, go ahead.
Kinsey, way back in the 1940s or 50s, at sexual studies regarding gender and whether someone's homosexual or not, whatever. It's become now that he was a pedophile, okay, and essentially used kids for his own purposes, essentially warped the system because he essentially he was a pedophile and ran a group of pedophiles. And unfortunately, I really recommend you watch Jordan Peterson and his video essays on his blog and other places on Daily Wire Plus, as well as on YouTube, and see his discussions that he's had with real veterans. And also, I recommend you see Matt Walsh's video, "What is a Woman?" because he drives it very well down about the nature of what this monster is. Essentially, what it does is essentially enables the mutilation of kids before the age of consent, and it has nothing to do with adults that decide to do this to themselves or whatever else. It has to do with the people that are essentially forced in it when their brain isn't properly where they can make adult decisions until they reach 21 or 25, depending on which evidence you look at. And it's a tragedy because everybody that's involved is a tragedy, but follow the money. There are people making millions of dollars by cutting people's body parts off or killing infant babies in the womb.
Wait a second. From your childhood, it sounded like you had like I also had like kind of like a resistant childhood. I left home at the age of 16, right? Yeah. What about? It sounds like you may have had a similar experience though.
Both me and my wife were the eldest child of second marriages, where essentially started with an affair or adultery. Okay, we were the oddballs in our family and such like that. And my mother hated men. My mother hated her father. My mother hated my father and everything else, and wanted me to be anybody else. She would call me the devil incarnate because I had Walter inside me. And thankfully, I became a Christian when I was 15. And
so you had to go out on your own.
so
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And
so
yes,
you want your own freedom from,
but,
adults telling you,
and when I was 15 or 16, after I became a Christian, and so I started having a life separate from her, then she wanted to work with a psychiatrist to get me institutionalized because I finally realized that I was being abused because she decided that I was.
Yeah, then you got to go. Me too.
Life.
Then you got to go. You can't be around that
Husband.
situation. You got
What?
to be able to cut out on your own. So
Well,
I'm really for
the thing is, I didn't know enough at the time. I wanted to finish high school and my paper route and everything else. So I learned my last year to stay away from her. And then I went off to the Christian college where I didn't have to be around all sorts of alcohol and promiscuity that was going on at Swarthmore College. So I was a paper boy in Swarthmore, and I was very aware of the moral excess and promiscuity that went on at Swarthmore, as well as drunken parties there. And I didn't want any part of it because my dad was an angry drunk, and but I became a Christian when I was 15, and that broke me out of the pattern, and that gave me a family where I met my wife in church, and we had 2 great sons. And basically God's blessed me for all the years since I married my wife in 1984. And and it's all because God provided me a family because I became a Christian in 1973. And that spared me from a lot of stuff like that, even any thoughts or temptations I might have had to self-mutilate myself. Because in some respects, parts of my family thought that I'd be much better to be around if I was medicated properly.
Hey, you survived, man. You're here, man. And honestly, I'm very grateful you came here.
God pulled me out of it, things, and I even on my website, because I have Asperger's, I got interviewed by a Asperger's counselor, and I went into detail about the family I grew up in, and so I understand the history of that. And the fact is, when I have mentally ill mother and an angry drunk father, yeah, the kids are gonna be the ones that suffer, and the parents look like they're angels. when in reality
Yeah.
they're depraved people that essentially, essentially, they
So
only care
yeah,
about
man,
themselves, and
like,
and it's in their interest to make sure
yeah,
that they don't
leaving the
lose
kids
it.
under the parents' medical advice until the age of 25, like that wouldn't have worked for me. You know what I mean? But
I'm sad about what happened with you, having leave your home at age 16, and that's going to provoke a lot of things. But the last thing you needed was some supposed people that just said they cared about you to say, to be acceptable in IRs, you got to cut off your penis.
you know, if people can make money doing it, I'm sorry to say they will.
Well, yeah,
Somebody
they
who does
will.
that stuff, and
They
it's
will,
just
and
y'all
suddenly
got to be
offer
real
to put
about
it
that.
back from
Yeah,
you.
there is. I'm not. I was in the I have medical experience. I'm telling you right now, the industry is hungry for money. It's just there got to be some skepticism. So I'm not against having a dialogue, and I really appreciate you coming on once again. All the people that's haters, hey, he's here on the channel. Appreciate that. Yeah, having a discussion with someone.
I
Myself,
apologize for
appreciate it.
anybody that objected to my use of language, but I have Asperger's. I'm direct, and sometimes using a bad word is appropriate in different situations because sometimes saying horse feathers isn't enough.
You know,
So,
I'm not here to work with people who agree with me. I'm here to work with the people that show up. And in the end, right, whoever shows up, we'll have to make a negotiation and figure out where we're going to meet in the middle because that's what's going to happen. The people that show up things are going to go that way. That's it. So thank
well,
you so much for being here.
thank you very much for the time, and and email me again. I will email you the link to the video so you could, but you probably have it there too, right?
Oh, it's going live right now on my
Okay,
YouTube anyways. So it's
cool.
already live.
Okay, good.
So it's all done. It's been a pleasure to meet you and it's been an honor. Thank you so much for
Well, if
coming on
I
the
ever
show.
visit New York City, it'd be fun to have lunch with you or something, to meet you face to face. But
There's
unfortunately,
discussion panels coming up on some of these topics, from election reform to even the trans issue. I don't know if you want to jump in, but that's fine. We're actually
well,
coming.
no, frankly, as a Christian, I see that as depraved by the parents
You
of
could,
kids. And,
and the unified platform at the end, right, is actually unanimous agreement from all the parties. So if you want to actually interfere with that, which I know my allies will be like, "Oh, Ed, what are you doing?" Yeah, actually, in the end, if we can't all agree to certain things, then we can't really move it forward because
well,
it's a unified platform is
well,
about that.
if I can leave you with this last point,
Yeah.
the problem that happens with immoral parents, whether the selfish immoral parents, is that the children are always the victims. And if the children as the victims could be victimized more, so the parents feel better about themselves, they will do it. Okay?
And maybe there's a way that,
And it's all
yeah.
about deflecting responsibility away from themselves that made the mess for their kids and say their kids need to be hospitalized or their kids need to be killed because they were selfish and didn't sterilize themselves before they got sexually active.
And just if you think differently, you can come on the channel too. I'm aware of both sides, but there are people who transition who actually are complaining about it, who say that they are unhappy that they
Yeah, well,
transition. So
they want to go
this does
back.
exist. They do exist. So
But
yeah.
a woman that gets her breast cut off cannot get them put back on and have them properly nursed.
But then there's some people who are satisfied. So it's like it's both ways, right?
Well,
So
no,
we got it. Yeah, it is what it is.
I'm talking about famous people that have detransitioned, that are on YouTube and have been coming out about the fact that the tragedy that occurred to them when they were 15, they're 21 now, and they realize their parents were perverts and essentially they were manipulating the situation they couldn't fix.
Unified platform isn't really what we all it's about what we could agree on. So maybe and if you want to say if you want to say that they got to meet certain
again,
like
that's my
appearance standards, that's fine, but that's your right. But the thing is that
well,
we
again,
might agree. We've already agreed that trans people deserve fair access to government
well,
resources.
yeah,
So as long
but
so we can
again,
still come up with a positive.
but
I
again,
know it's
it's a
not great, but it
situation
was
where
start. Yeah.
let me make this clear. Nobody should be discriminated against if they're going to be normal around other people and work hard and everything else. But the problem comes from any activist where they have it in your face saying either you agree with me or I'm going to beat you up. Or
in the end, after just so you know,
with me or I'm going to sue you.
But what we do is we collect all the recommendations from all the candidates, no matter what they are. You could even say, I want trans surgery to be illegal, right? That anybody could pose anything. Then at the end, we shoot the questionnaire to all the candidates, right? They can vote yes, no, abstain, right? Yeah. And in the end, what unanimously passes that goes up there. So if you have like an extreme view, it's very tough to pass, but you can still have your name is
Oh, you
recorded to
know,
show as someone who's created a policy that everybody could agree on. And I think that's a powerful tool as legislator to
the
be, go ahead.
thing is, again, I do not believe that taxpayer money should be used to support elective procedures with someone who wants to do that. If someone wants to buy insurance to cover their own procedures or whatever else, that's on
Yeah,
them.
I can't stop you
Okay,
from
but
proposing
that's
that. I
else.
can't stop the vote from happening, but it's up to, right, once again, all the participating. They'll have a chance. Maybe they don't even participate, right? Yeah, but if they want to, and we'll see what comes out of his
That doesn't
result.
mean taxpayers should pay for it. That's my point.
Hey, that's your right to say that. You know what I mean? I feel I get you on that. Actually, I feel like with the
Fine,
pieces in the medical
and
industry,
these people that
I could
agree with
support some
you
of that. Yeah,
will
not
probably won't
100%,
not
but
vote for me, but I'm not expecting to get their votes. That's what the democratic process is. That if I don't represent their votes, they don't have to vote for me.
yeah, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. That's definitely true. So thanks again for participating, and I really look forward to more conversations with you.
I'll do my best, and all I can say is all the best to you and your podcast. I really wish you well, but I hope if you can work it out where you can get roommates and get a decent apartment, I think it'll be a
No,
blessing.
I don't want that. Yeah, I'd rather be on the street, man. I'm that kind. I
No,
know
whatever.
you met people like me
All the
before.
best.
Yeah, but what about when is your primary?
The primary is on March 5th.
You got anybody
Having a lot
going
of fun
against,
with
or
nice people to them.
are you uncontested? Probably, or are you?
Well,
No, you're contested probably, right?
I have two other opponents. A veteran who's in the military for over 30 years, who has got his own set of credentials. I've been
Okay.
teaching chemistry for over 30 years, and I have mine. And then
Who's
a
that other guy?
27 years old from Puerto Rico who
Okay,
is
it's not Matt Ho, is it?
Huh?
It's not Matt Ho, is it?
No.
Okay, all right.
No,
'Cause
no, basically, me and the military veteran are going against the guy who isn't fluent in English. So,
Okay, well, it is what it is. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. All right, I'm going
all the best to you, and I wish you well.
I'm
So,
gonna end the stream right here. I'll just stay on with you just for a second. If there's anything else you want to talk about, I'm ending the stream. Okay, the stream is ended now. Now it's just you and me. Anything else you want to say before I go?
no, it's fine. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I love to answer these questions, and I hope I didn't offend you, but again, I understand the position.
No, it's not at all. No, I really appreciate it.
Because for years I was confused, thinking in my head that maybe if I was my mother's daughter, I would be acceptable. But then I realized that the way my sister was treated was in some respects worse than me, because she's struggling with her own baggage. And it's a situation where I realize in some respects, God made me who I am, as odd as I am with Asperger's. And yeah, I have two sons. And so I know what a guy is.
You know,
And I know
there's
what a girl is, because I have twin granddaughters, and they're very, very different from my sons. So,
I'll admit that I'm more of a progressive than you are, but the thing is that
that's fine.
there's a lot of truth that you say is in terms of exclusion going on with, and like, you know, the Democrats are more racist in many ways than the Republicans, especially here in New York
No,
City.
they are the racist party.
Completely. I agree. I agree.
They have a history of being that way.
I agree. So I really
Nothing's
appreciate.
changed.
Yeah. And once again, like I said, the data supports that, right? Actually, who's participating with me is the Republicans, right? So I
That's
really
right.
appreciate you participating. Sorry about, there's a caricature that's painted of MAGA people, right? Yeah, like they're all they say, oh, they're blah, blah, they say this, right? There's a way that progressives are portrayed. I'm sorry about that stereotype. There are people like that in the group. I'm sorry, but they're not all like that, like me. Some of them really have conversation. I'm introduced to a lot more. There's a lot of Green Party people that are very Republican leaning, and this is really
well, again, I said I'm a Republican because I like the Republican platform, because I think it covers a lot more people and is nicer to a lot more people that deserve it.
Yeah.
And essentially wants to protect the innocent against those that would try and break in, rob, and steal from them, and even allows people to defend themselves with the proper Second Amendment right to bear arms, so that if you got an intruder coming in your house to wake your wife, you have a right to shoot them dead at the door.
It's a tool, yeah. Yeah, actually, even in New York City, a potato gun is illegal. Like, what is a gun? What is a gun? You know what I mean?
Well,
yeah.
Well, again, they act as though criminals are going to obey the laws.
What about a nail gun? Can I have a
The
nail
laws
gun? You know what I mean?
against gun ownership do not affect the criminals at all because the criminals don't care. All it is a way is the state to essentially deprive the means of normal people to defend themselves.
Yeah, we're literally trying to defend ourselves from Democrat corruption. Like, if you see like more of my work, you're going to see us literally like going to board of elections and fighting them everywhere. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, all the best, and I wish you well, and keep up what you're doing. And I hope someone steps up and offers you a spare bedroom or something like that. Or
No, I don't want that. I've been offered before, but it's always people in messed up conditions. They're about to be evicted and they
no,
want me to
no,
save
no,
their asses.
no. I'm talking
Hell
about.
no. Hell no, I can't do that.
I'm talking about someone who essentially wants to help because they like what you're doing.
That's not the way the world works,
And
okay?
you can
It's not
pay
the way the
rent.
world works.
You can pay rent at an appropriate level so you can have a decent place to live.
We'll see. Enjoy the work, man. I'm putting out real groundbreaking stuff. Thank you for participating. And I
Okay.
hope Trump visits you. You're right in the neighborhood. It's an important place. Yeah, you have competitors. I'm sorry. Yeah, if you were uncontested, I'm sure he'd already be supporting you.
Well, I have no idea if anyone else is gonna be on your platform, but I'm very happy to answer.
Oh, I've already had a presidential candidate and another Republican from there's more coming. A Republican from New York and a Democrat from Texas. Now you're from North Carolina.
Cool.
I got
Well,
more
if the
coming up.
Republican from New York, say hi to them for me.
Green from New
I
Jersey is
appreciate
coming
all
up.
these
We got a lot more.
because
Yeah.
he's a brave man in New York City, in New York, to run as a Republican.
Oh, well, you'll see us at events together. We went to the RFK event together. We was hanging out. We're doing all kinds of things. So
Well, I don't support RFK because he's a liberal Democrat and everything else. And
my guy from Blexit is trying to have a rally for Trump in us in the South Bronx.
oh, well, I think Trump will get a big thing because I think
We'll
the
see what's
normal
up.
people, the workers and everything else that he hung around with when they were building the Trump buildings when he was a young person.
You might see me in the footage. You never know.
Those workers and the cops and the others are going to be voting for him. He might even,
you know, actually,
he will win in Staten Island.
You know, I really have this rule where I only work with people that work with me. So I put some stuff up to Trump. I have even documented on my email channel, on my YouTube channel, of me sending emails to Trump saying like, here's some wrongfully incarcerated people I work with. If you could help us, right? Yeah, we're gonna help. We're gonna help you out definitely for real. But we're still waiting to hear back. So all you gotta do is reach back, right? Yeah, I'm not gonna just work for him for nothing.
Now,
Yeah.
what I'd like you to do,
Okay, no.
what I'd like you to do is please
Right.
email me your official title, because I will be putting on my own YouTube channel and Substack.
Oh yeah, I'm New York City's #1 street
And
activist.
so I want to properly title it with what your broadcast is so you can get more notice. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, brother.
Okay. All the best.
Appreciate you.
very
Thank
much.
you. Have a good
Bye.
one. Thank you. Bye.